So I'm curious, the first time you try this spot, I mean, you're not actually doing it on a show. This is a practice thing.
No, first time I tried the hangman was on a show.
In front of fans?
Yeah, in front of fans. So it was, what's funny is I remember Shane and I, when we were part of UWF, Bill Watts' UWF, was expanding into new areas. They were attempting to run shows in new areas because they were real dependent on the mid-southern oil towns. And when there was a downturn in the economy, you could see that reflected on the attendance. But Watts had this great syndicated package, and they started venturing to other cities or towns where their TV was strong. So Shane and I, we worked 100 West Virginia. That's where I met Missy Hyatt, who walked in on me while I was naked. And didn't walk in on me. It was just one of those bathrooms where there's no stalls, right? And she happens to walk in, and the hardcore legend was in the pooping process. So that was the first. That was the first meeting. And so Shane and I were tearing it down by the standards of the day as independents. We'd be the opening match, and we were doing everything we could, and we could do quite a few things, especially by the standards of the time. And I think that's the first night we threw in the hangman in front of Eddie and Missy and Buddy Jack Roberts. But I'd probably done it a time or two before that. So a couple days later, Shane and I are walking from our motel. I won't even call it a hotel because it was almost decidedly a motel. And Missy and Eddie, who were married at that time, drive by, and they can tell that Shane and I are talking over a high spot. And Eddie could tell what high spot it was just by the verbal language. Because Shane would kip up, and he would give me an enziguri. And that's what would send me through the ropes.
I see.
And so they were able to deduce that just by our body language. So here we are. We think we're protecting the business. We're actually walking in public, going over high spots that Eddie Gilbert can call based on our body language.
That's
hilarious. So
hilarious.
I was using that bad boy as far back as '86. And with the knowledge that there was a price to pay for it, no one else dared do it. I think there's some great footage that I have managed to hold on to of Bray Wyatt asking me to show him that move in 2013.
Wow.
While I am in full Santa Claus regalia. So I said, hey, I sent it to him, and I said, someday when they do the Bray Wyatt DVD, you're going to want this footage. So
yeah.
I'll try to dig it up for you. That'd be cool to find.
Hilarious. Right? The idea that Santa Claus is telling him how to do
Santa
the
Claus is
hangman.
showing him how to do it. But now there's a definite. Now I look at those ropes, I was like, first of all, I don't think I can pull myself out. And on the night we're going to discuss in Germany, I did pull myself out, but it wasn't an altogether successful excavation project. But it was a difficult move, and there would be and I'd have these big splits in the back of my ear on 4 or 5 occasions. I'd had it enough, Conrad, to know that the back of your ear is mostly cartilage. It doesn't bleed. But it hurts, and it's crazy. It's laid wide open, no blood, drop or two of blood. And then when we fast forward and talk in depth about the night in Germany, there was a lot of blood, which is why I realized this was above and beyond any ear injury I'd had doing this move.
When you're getting those ear injuries, not that night in Germany, but before, did it ever cross your mind that, hey, this is a possibility? This thing could come off?
No, it hadn't. Because I thought the only way the ear would come off if it was cauliflowered. And some ears will do it, and some ears will not. And by virtue of the fact that I'd been through this thing, I guess on like 10, 12 different occasions, to where even if you didn't have the split, and if you did, you'd still go through this process where the ear would turn all these colors. Go from a dark black and purple to a greenish hue, and then it's tailing off on yellow. And all that time, it's incredibly sensitive and incredibly painful. In Japan, The reason all all the workers walk around with the cauliflower ears is because it's encouraged and
Right.
influenced.
It's a badge of honor.
It's a badge of honor, and everyone wants it. And it's almost like there's something missing if you don't have it. So they do the what you're supposed to do if you think you have it, put ice on it, attend to it, drain it, whatever you have to do. Then in Japan, they whack you in the ear and they break those blood vessels, and then instead of handing you an ice pack, they hand you a heating pad.
Oh.
Yeah, and the guys want it. It's not something that's uncalled for. It's called for, and everyone wants it. But in my history, I just never got cauliflower ear. Even
Right.
I amateur wrestled, for my senior year, had this injury 12, 13 times. It just never happened. So it never dawned on me that it could get worse. I thought, this is a price I'm willing to pay. I have a split in my ear. It hurts like crazy.
Was it always the same one?
It was always the same one. It was always
Never the inside ear, always the outside.
Right, yeah, it was always the outside ear. And oddly, when I did the King of the Deathmatch tournament in Japan, I nearly lost the left ear in the barbed wire. So that would have left me in a very unique situation, being a man with no ears.
I'm curious, is there, it doesn't sound like it, but is there a best practice to doing the spot? You want to be in the center of the ring, I would assume.
Yeah. I don't know what's something people should be practicing in looser ropes.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask, because in my head it feels like, and again, I know you would never do this, but I'm thinking, man, if I know I got to do that spot, we're going to have to turn that turnbuckle a few times and loosen those ropes a little more.
Loosen it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And on the night in Germany, they were extra tight. I tried arguing that was WCW's doing in hiring a ring crew that was actually a rock and roll road crew instead of a specialized ring crew. Those ropes were tighter. And it's such a specialty move. If you use it too often, it becomes it loses some of its meaning.
Well, you might tip your hand too if the audience sees
somebody out there loosening it up.
Yeah.
I thought when I got to WWE that the move would be easier.
Because of the rope difference.
The ropes. It wasn't that much easier. I did it maybe 6-7 times in WWE, and it was always difficult to get out. And there's this moment in Mind Games. This is one of the top 5-10 seconds of my career is that Shawn Michaels and I have a lot going on, and it culminates with me taking the bump and hanging my head in the ropes. Shawn comes over, bam, I hit him with the mandible claw. And what he does is he's selling while simultaneously trying to help me get out of there, which is pretty cool. Instead of somebody coming and absolutely looking like they're trying to help their opponent out of a bad situation, Shawn did it while he was selling. And
wow.
I think Earl Hebner may have been in on that, trying to get out of there. There was one other situation I did it in a major match in WWE where it was Mankind versus The Undertaker, April 1997. So I'm the first.
Revenge of the Taker.
Yeah, Revenge of the Taker. And as you and I talked about last week, when I came in as Mankind, the internet was maybe in its infancy at that time. Of course, anyone who read the sheets knew that I was Cactus Jack, and anyone who had watched WCW knew. But I'd say 75% of the audience did not know. This is about a week before I give, or maybe I've already given the interview with Jim Ross. That would turn the tide on that whole, the Foley character and introduce the world to Dude Love. But at the time, nobody knew what I looked like. Maybe I was thinking that because this interview was out there, people were going to find out, so I might as well expose it anyway. And so I was going to do the hangman, and in getting out, the mask was going to stay.
Oh, that's cool.
Pretty cool visual. And because I was, at the time, no longer, not a believer in special effects, really believed that if something was done to alter my look, it had to be that old school way, which Robert Fuller introduced to me as boogering the eye with a towel, rubbing off some of the skin. And I thought, a towel is good. Sandpaper would be better.
Oh.
And so this was one of maybe 3 times that I had molded some pretty good-looking bruises with a piece of sandpaper. And in this case, since the world is going to see me and I want to look hideous, now all I would have had to do is go to Jerry Lawler, who could have made me up to look hideous in 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
A Richie Posner, I'm sure, could have done something similar, but Lawler, he specialized in those bruises. And instead, I more or less rubbed off a good portion of the right side of my face, but never told Kevin Dunn that we were looking to expose the hideous nature of mankind underneath that mask. So we hit that thing perfectly. I squeeze out, off comes the mask, and they never showed a single solitary moment of mankind without his mask. Because
Not wanting to spoil it.
They thought it had been a mistake.
Yeah.
So, and so I walked around with a hideous bruise on my face, which turns into a scab after about 3 or 4 days.
Gross.
But that was what I was looking to do.
Did you know it didn't air, or when did you find out it didn't?
Well, it was only when I watched it back, and I was like, "But what?" Yeah, and it's again that's all I had to do was go and say, "Listen, this is what I want to do." They would have passed it by Vince, and if Vince didn't want people to see him without the mask, he could ixnate it.
So that was a teachable moment for you.
Definitely a teachable moment. Yeah. I had a lot in my mind. You know, we did the big bump through the head first bump through the table that had never been done before or since. You know, which was
an unbelievable visual.
A cool visual with my feet sticking up through that big hole, right? But going back to the hangman, there was always a price to pay.